The year was 2007. I had just been relocated to Oklahoma because my dad and stepmom had successfully gaslit the courts into believing my mom was abusive. Needless to say, I was in a pretty miserable place, but hey, my birthday was coming up and I'd been told a PlayStation 2 was on the way. Turns out it was actually a GameCube and the boomers just didn't know the difference, but more importantly, it came with a game. A Mario game. Now, I was familiar with Mario already. Heck, you could have already considered me a Mario fan. My favorite game was Super Mario 64, but I'd also played the likes of Super Mario Advance 2, Super Mario World, Mario vs. Donkey Kong, and Mario Kart DS. But this was different. This was Paper Mario, subtitled The Thousand-Year Door. Just the mere title and cover art sparked intrigue, wonder, and mystery. What is the Thousand-Year Door? Is Mario going on a treasure hunt? Who is that big red dragon? Why is there a cute lady Goomba wearing a hard hat? Or a Koopa wearing a hoodie? Who's the pirate skeleton or the space pope? Why is there an angry little Yoshi? What on earth is this game? It's nothing like I've ever seen before. And then the back cover inspired even further intrigue. What sleeps behind the door? Is that a level where you play as Bowser? And who is this cloud lady with the nice assets? I need to know more. Soon enough, I was able to play for the first time, and it was magical. I usually only got to play for an hour at most, but man, those hours were my escape from all my troubles. This world was so rich and full of life. Everywhere I turned, there were new interesting characters to meet, befriend, or battle. The chapter plots went from great to amazing to downright subversive masterpieces that would live rent-free in my head for months after the fact. This game kick-started my interest in Mario RPGs, and since then, I've become a lifelong fan of not only this game, but the other two Paper Mario games from the 2000s, as well as the Mario & Luigi series. I would not be Fawful the Great 64 without TTYD. Heck, who's to say my primary interest would even be Mario if not for this game? This was also an era I'd all but given up on returning. I watched my two favorite Mario & Luigi games return with glorious 3DS remasters, receive a resounding meh, and bankrupt their studio. I watched Paper Mario abandon everything that made it great in the 2000s, with constant developer interviews hammering in for 3 games straight that is just how it has to be now. Even with other areas of the Mario series entering a renaissance, it just felt like Paper Mario was destined to always be the exception. And then, right when I'd given up, right when I felt like I was wasting my breath begging for it, Nintendo dropped it. And they didn't just drop it in the middle of a direct either. It was their closer. Their one last thing. The slot historically given to Smash Bros, Zelda, and mainline Mario. The remake existing at all would have been a dream come true. But this tells me that this isn't just some filler remake to Nintendo. This is a huge deal. Nintendo knows, and they are going all in with it. I've been saying for years I'm worried that even if TTYD got a remake, Nintendo would botch the marketing, like they have historically done with Mario RPGs in my opinion. I mean, come on, Super Paper Mario, a game about a literal doomsday prophecy and a tragic love story, being marketed as a quirky little romp with a perspective gimmick? Thousand-Year Door itself being marketed mostly on the paper transformations and not the grandiose nature of the adventure and departure from the safety zone of the Mushroom Kingdom? Those games could have been such bigger hits if marketed on their narrative elements and the scope of the adventure rather than the quirky little gimmicks of the week. Like, these are bigger Mario adventures than most mainline games are. Call me crazy, but I think Nintendo may actually have received that message with this remake. They opened the trailer with the iconic storybook and the magical tune that accompanies it. And the trailer itself went all in, showing the variety of different settings and characters, as if to say, "We heard you! We know what you missed in newer entries, so here, rest assured everything is intact just like you remember it." This still doesn't feel real. I still low-key think I'm gonna wake up any second now. This is a fairy tale. It stopped being realistic a long time ago, and yet it's here, and it's real. The way they redid the graphics is probably the closest thing to a best-case scenario I could ever hope for. I do have some minor nitpicks, but for the most part, they did not botch the art style. The smooth animations, the gradient shading, it's all intact. They just added a bit of thickness to the layers, which I don't mind at all. It's almost like Sticker Star's promo art, but better. So what's left to talk about? It sure is TTYD. It sure is back. Well, I could mention some new features I'd like to see. While I do believe it's way overblown by critics and is not nearly as big a deal breaker as some claim, The backtracking in this game can be annoying. So why not add a nifty little fast travel to the magical map? Anywhere, story permitting, you can select a marker on the map that you've been to, and it will warp you there. I'd also like it if the general white chase was made optional. Repeat players can find him in his house at any point after the mayor tells you to find him, but first-time players can still do the search. Much like how in Super Paper Mario, the objectives involving finding a code can be skipped if you already know the code. And finally, adding a pipe between Creepy Steeple and Twilight Town that is unlocked via use of Vivian. Oh, right, Vivian! Her story is the one I feel needs the most change. See, in the Japanese version, she's transgender. It's handled very poorly, like to the point where literally everyone else, including Goombella, her partner bio, and even her catch card in Super, refuse to affirm her gender and instead call her a boy who pretends to be a girl. I've seen a lot of folks use that as a source that she is just a boy in Japan, not a transgender woman. However, Vivian herself clearly identifies as a woman, uses feminine pronouns, and considers herself a sister, therefore everything else can be dismissed as outdated writing. The English version affirms her as a woman, but takes out the detail of her being trans entirely. Not ideal either. I think all scripts should be changed to reflect the Italian script, in which she is a trans woman who is positively affirmed as such by the rest of the cast, excluding Beldam, who's meant to be an abusive character anyway. Other than that, it would be really cool to have boss rematches, new optional bosses tied to Triple Center missions, new badges, maybe even more optional party members. It would also be nice if we could actually explore Mario's house this time around, as in the original it was a fully functional map, but could only be explored with hacking. Ditto for Bowser's Castle. Perhaps one of the post-game side quests could take you there for a third battle with Bowser, where he's more comparable to his difficulty in Paper Mario 64. Speaking of Bowser, it would also be cool if his 2D side-scrolling levels were replayable, and maybe even have optional ones as well. Overall though, I'm fine even if they keep the game mostly the same. This is one of my favorite games of all time, and it's still surreal that it's back at all. I guess the last thing I'll mention for now is that I hope to Granby this means something significant for the next original entry. It will be downright soul-crushing if the next game after this remake is still restricted to Hell and Back and not allowed to have character design on par with what's on display here. Let's go back to stuff like Koopa Trolls and Clefs being recurring enemies, a Waka somewhere in the world, Cammy being Bowser's right hand, and an incarnation of the Merlin clan. These are all things we haven't had in the series since Super Paper Mario at the latest. It all deserves to come back and stay back. I guess all we can do at this point is wait and see, and anticipate this remake as passionately as possible. And please, please, please buy this remake! Even if you've played the game a dozen times or emulate it or whatever, this thing needs to sell. It's gonna be at the tail end of the Switch's life, and we know how that worked out for the Mario & Luigi remakes. If Nintendo heard our cries and gave us this remake with top-level marketing only for it to flop after all that, say goodbye to any hint of classic Paper Mario ever returning, and hello to the sanitized modern direction resuming for good. This cannot happen. We cannot let this happen. So buy this remake. I'll even buy it for some people if I have any extra money. Definitely brainstorming ideas for giveaways. Stay tuned for that. And in the nearer future, Super Mario Bros. Wonder and Super Mario RPG. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you on the flip side.